this on.
The new Bible.
A couple months old.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's a 3D
gift.
Bible.
It's a super giant. Yeah, it's a huge giant lettering is what it is.
It's like Genesis 6, right?
What's that? Oh, in the giant?
That's what they used.
Go ahead and just say something, guys. Count to 3.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, say something funny.
Something funny.
That's it.
You said say something funny.
It has to be funny. That wasn't that
I
funny.
said something funny.
Oh, this is comfy.
You wanted it to look like the Matrix, Quentin Vladis.
At the end, we're gonna offer you the red or the blue pill.
Oh, listen, guys, I took the red pill so many years ago. That went down a decade or more ago. So, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just pick up where we left off. One of my notes here is that the life for my wife and I, once we got settled into our home, was just delightful. Of course, I'm speaking for myself, and at least what appeared to be delightful for her. My work at HP was rock solid. In terms of provision and material circumstances, things couldn't have been better. In fact, things were so well for us materially, I even treated myself to buying a Kubota tractor. It was a miniature Kubota tractor with a loader and a backhoe and even a mower. It was one of the last things I treated myself to. I mean, it was an implement, but it was something I wanted to have. And so with that in that home, it was just a delightful place to be. Inevitably, now, since I'd been working at HP almost from the time I started, there was always downsizing pressure as they started offshoring more and more production and development. And eventually, in '05, that pressure was really coming to bear. And not to mention the fact I had a supervisor who had a burr up his, up his pant leg to get rid of me, and he didn't like me at all. And so I knew that he was actually going to, do his best to drum me out that year. Well, fortunately, through God's blessing, a voluntary severance package was offered again, and one we never even thought would happen, actually. I thought everybody at HP figured those things were a thing of the past. They would never happen. Well, they offered one and offered a very generous one. So for me, it was a no-brainer to take it. Again, remember, my financial situation was extremely sound, and this was actually perfect timing. So I took the severance and I left HP in May of '05, the end of May of '05. After taking this time, or taking the severance, talking it out with my wife, one of the things I wanted to do, I just wanted to take a little time for myself. That was a really hard job, actually. It was shift work, which is 12 on, 12 off. And so I was pretty burnt out, actually. So I was, we agreed that it was just a great idea just to take like a year off and see what happened. Plus, I also had intentions, or I was gathering intentions to start looking seriously at my railroad hobby, my railroad antiques hobby, and start pursuing that from a standpoint of a business. And I think I've already mentioned that, but at that point I was definitely, in actuality, intending on making that happen. As it so happened, my wife had later in the fall, it was a late fall, well, somewhere in the fall, she got a call from one of her friends, and said, hey, there's somebody who's looking for an admin for a 4-hour-a-day admin job in Corvallis, and asked if my wife wanted to take it, and she said, sure, yeah, that's something to do. It wasn't essential for money. It was just something she just thought, hey, that's why not? And it would sort of offset, what was typical of our massive income, or considerable income. So she did that, but I just want to make the point that it was in no way required. It was no way needed. It was something she just volunteered to do. Now, it was about this time, which is about the same time the Krupps family, as you recall, finally moved into their home that they had designed and built in North Corvallis. And it was right about this time that even I started taking notice that Fatima started really calling on my wife a lot with ostensibly all kinds of problems, like, hey, I've got a problem with my husband, I've got a problem with this, I've got a problem. And there was just always seemingly some kind of a mini crisis that she needed my wife's help with. And, at first I didn't think much of it, but eventually it became obvious that this woman was now just, at minimum abusing my wife's good nature and good grace. But I would say that in retrospect, Fatima was using this as sort of like that final assault on her to get her to emotionally identify with her and her perceived sufferings and whatnots in life. And I mean, I know that's true, and I can see where my wife's, in retrospect, my wife's mindset started really giving itself over to the needs of this woman as if she were under assault or under some kind of unusual distresses. Again, I didn't have enough information at the time to really think anything sinister. In fact, I wasn't even close to thinking anything sinister. This is my wife, and I trust my wife.
And throughout this time, Fatima was still married to her husband?
Yes, okay. Yes. And with that question, we segue into the next chapter here of where this is all going. And here we go. So, it was in the late fall. In fact, I could even say it was about approximately the first week of November of '05 that my wife, in fact, I remember my wife had gone back east to visit with her folks. And when I picked her up at the airport, at Portland Airport, she says, "Hey, I've got some terrible news." And I go, "What is that?" And she goes, Fatima and her kids, they had to flee the house. And I go, what do you mean had to flee? And my wife tells me that Fatima claimed that her husband, Jeff, said that he was thinking of murdering them all. Now, I'm just in a state of shock, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, well, this was, imponderable, actually, and I just, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And my wife stood by this and said, this is what's happened. This is what's really happened. She's fled, and she didn't even know where Fatima was, although she did get, a phone call, or no doubt phone calls, letting her know about the situation. And as we're driving back from Portland, I'm just in a state of shock. I'm thinking, well, are you? I was just trying to fathom what was really going on. But anyway, so that's this horrific news that we get. I guess I'll say, I think I've already mentioned this, but I just want to say again that I knew very little of Jeff Krupp. What little I knew of him is that he was sort of a quiet character, odd in that he was pretty much withdrawn and often a very techie kind of a character, but nothing in his nature, nothing I ever saw made me think whatsoever that he'd be anything like this story that's now coming from Fatima to my
And now
wife.
this was true or not?
Well, you'll hear that technically, this is where it becomes so wicked and bizarre. So at this point, I just want to say, I had no reason to doubt my wife's account on any of these things. I'm believing her. And in fact, one of the things I remembered about that drive back from Portland was that I remember her holding my hand and looking at me and just saying, "You have no idea how much I love you and how blessed I am to have you as my husband." This is in November of '05. And I just echoed back the same thing, and I said, "Honey," I said the same thing, and I don't even know what to think about this story. This is beyond my, it's beyond my capacity to really grasp it, actually. But anyway, the point is that there was nothing in my wife's testimony. There was just nothing in me that questioned my wife and thought there'd be anything that she was spinning in in the sense of spinning some kind of a sinister plot. And at the end of your question, you asked how I got verification. Eventually, she had gotten a lawyer and then got a court date to hear about this thing, and he was summoned to court, and the judge. I wasn't there, but this is several people from Calvary Chapel of Corvallis had later told me, affirmed to me, they said that he was there, and the judge asked him, is this true? Is this what happened? He goes, yes. Well, yes, I do. I affirmed I have been having these thoughts. I mean, this is literally the language he told me. He said that he was having thoughts of murdering them all, but that he would take the thoughts captive and then make them go away. And I mean, now, this is so bizarre and so creepy. I didn't know what to think, but the bottom line was, all I knew at this point was it was fully corroborated as fact that Fatima's claim wasn't a lie. I mean, it was as she said. So at this point, I mean, this family is finished. I mean, it's over. This whole thing is just like a nuclear bomb going off. It just ended.
Yeah.
After this court hearing, Jeff was barred from, was ordered by the court to never have any contact with his wife or his children ever again. I mean, this is what
Really?
I heard. Really. Now, I don't know if that court, these courts are just lawless. Trust me, Benton County Court is a lawless, evil, wicked operation. But at the same time, I mean, if you're a judge and you have somebody confess to you that I'm thinking of murdering them, though. I mean, on the other hand, I don't know how else you couldn't do something like this. I think it was sort of like a conditional. You're hereby indefinitely ordered to not have any contact with your family, your wife, your children, under any circumstances, barring some subsequent hearings on this. And I advise you to get an attorney, and he did, and so that's how that started. But he was barred by this court from ever talking to even seeing his children ever again. Okay, so after this, the court then orders Jeff out of his home. He's still there, and says, "I order you out, and I'm giving it to the wife and the children." And so, sure enough, the story was that just one morning, I mean, knock, 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 and there's a gaggle of Corvallis police there, ordering him out by order of the court, and that was that. I mean, he just got escorted out, and as I understand, he went down to Brownsville to start living with his brother-in-law and sister, and so that was the last. So Fatima and the children get back into this house. Now, as soon as she gets back into the house, the next thing I'm almost immediately hearing from my wife is that Fatima is claiming that Jeff is now stalking them, and stalking them at nighttime and driving by all the time. And even I remember one time they were saying that he was even coming up to the window and looking at him. Yeah, good. I'm glad you see the absurdity of this. I mean, even I was saying, wait, I mean, what? Come on, now this is really starting to smell. Like, I can't tell who's more insane than whom here at this point. But when I heard that, I'm thinking, okay, now this is complete nonsense. This is a complete fabrication. The whole thing smelled like a lie to begin with. And I don't remember how I articulated that to my wife, but I said, wait a minute, this isn't, come on, what in the world? Why would he do that? That would only be making things worse for him. He'd be risking getting thrown in prison, violating a court order blatantly like that. I mean, but anyway, at this point, I probably should just say that my wife, I could see at this point, was completely given over to Fatima. I mean, she was, whatever that thing spoke was gospel, and you don't question it. And although I wasn't seeing it in that sinister light, I was definitely seeing that she was just now unquestionably accepting anything she was taking. And again, keep in mind that we do have as fact that he walked into open court and said, "I'm thinking of murdering you all." So it's I can also see why it's pretty hard not to, or almost reflexively, go to somebody's aid like that. So I hear this bizarre story of he's stalking them, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was right after that that my wife tells me that Fatima has made the decision that she can't safely stay in this home because he's still looking about an angle to murder them all. And I'm immediately told at this point that Fatima says that she absolutely positively must get to Beaverton, Oregon. And Beaverton is a large suburb of Portland. It's just, I don't know, maybe 10 miles south of Portland. It's all part of the greater metropolis. But I'm hearing Beaverton, and I'm thinking, Beaverton, okay, first of all, why Beaverton? I guess that's the first question. And secondly, how does that keep you safe? I mean, if he can find you in North Corvallis, he can find you in Beaverton. Maybe this guy was really intent on trying to kill you. Simply driving up the road an hour and a half to Beaverton is not going to stop that. Of course, I made this point with my wife, and again, hey, listen, she knows what she's doing. She's got to do this, and they got to keep from getting killed, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, would your wife get mad at you at this point when you try to say things? Or was it more?
Good question. No, but I could tell that she was reflexively accepting anything this Fatima was saying. In other words, it wasn't to be questioned. If she said Timbuktu, then they've got to go to Timbuktu, and that's the final word. So no, at least outwardly, I should say outwardly, I shouldn't say that I did not see anything. But in this time frame, and I really should say the time frame of November of 05 to November of 06, I think that's really where my wife's soul was. She just gave her soul over to this thing. But so in other words, was I truly, enraging her internally? I don't know. I just didn't have any visual of that.
Did you ever talk to the guy? Like,
Oh yeah. We'll get to that. I mean,
No, like when all of this was happening, like you're getting the stories from.
No, I never did, and I always wonder if that was a mistake. I don't really think it was. I mean, when you're told, and it's corroborated, he walks in open court and says, "Yeah, I'm thinking of murdering my wife and my children." I'm thinking, okay, whatever he is, at best he's completely a fruitcake. I mean, that's at best, and or it's worse than that. And at this point, given what little I knew of him, I knew he was very withdrawn and he hardly had anything to say. I said, well, there's nothing to corroborate here. So at least that was my sense then.
Did you ever talk to Fatima during this?
I really should just say no. In other words, you mean like a face-to-face
Yeah,
Q&A?
like ask her kind of like.
No, everything was through my wife.
Like you didn't have to help her move or anything?
Well, no, we did, actually, that's coming up right around the corner here. So anyway, so I even say there's no reason I had any reason to think, question my wife and question at least the overarching claim of what Fatima was saying. It was starting to look bizarre and fruitcakeish, but again, the court admission really just sort of was a checkmate in terms of really, seriously, questioning any.
And I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but
No, go ahead.
I'm guessing the court admission was fake and he was told to do that.
Well, you are so close to the truth. I'd like to answer that at the end.
Okay.
But you are 99% there, and I'll explain to you why, in my opinion, and I don't even hesitate to say it, why he did what he did, and it's very, very sad. But anyway. So anyway, the Fatima is just trying to get out of that house as fast as she could, and it's literally like 2 days later, I'm told by my wife that she's got a truck rented and they want to get out today, and they found a place up in Beaverton, and they're going, and of course I was even asked to help them, and as a matter of fact. One very, very bizarre thing. I don't know if it was probably just pure coincidence, but I had helped Fatima and the kids get everything loaded up in their big U-Haul, and then we started the drive north up I-5 going toward Beaverton. And when I was doing this, I was alone. Megan did not join us, but she said, "Hey, listen, take my cell phone." And that way, if she wanted to contact me or I could contact her or whatever, we could just stay in touch. I said, okay, fine. And by the way, I wasn't even, she had just gotten this cell phone like a couple months. And by the way, I meant to make that as a note. The cell phone came unexpectedly on the doorstep one day, courtesy of her mother. Yeah, you already know what's going on here, okay? So I'm just thinking, oh, what a nice thing, a gift. So she gives me the cell phone, and as I'm driving north, the phone rings, and it's just an unknown number in the local area. I thought, well, okay, I'll answer it. And the guy at the other end says, yeah, I'm trying to find Megan Bryant. Is she available? I said, who is this? He goes, this is Jeff Krupp. And I'm like, I should have backed up and said he was also forbidden from having any contact with anybody, essentially any relations of the family or close relations. And so I took this to be, you shouldn't have even called. And I also don't remember how I ended it, but I ended it really quickly. I said, listen, I'm not at liberty to talk with you right now. I'm doing blah, blah. I've got to go, click. And that's how I dealt with it. But it was very unnerving too. Because just at the time, just the very time. I've got this phone for a couple of hours. And and you might say, well, why was he trying to reach my wife? I'll tell you why, even though I was intending on telling you later. And that was because he had heard from my wife that my mother-in-law was a psychiatrist. Well, she was a psychiatrist in her psycho head, but he didn't know that, and he was trying to get some people to come by his side and say, listen, I need someone to corroborate that I'm not really crazy. I'm not, I'm sane, I'm sound. And he thought the best thing to do is try to approach my mother-in-law for it. And that's
who went to a psychiatrist for a year.
Right? She's just freshly out of this 6-figure a year or whatever psycho ward in South Carolina. You get it. I mean, this whole thing is just insane. But of course, he's sort of in a sense a victim of a pack of lies, as was I. He's being told what my wife is telling Fatima, and so he doesn't know that that there's no truth.
Now, how did he have this new cell phone number if this thing was just a new?
I don't know how he had my wife's number. I really don't. But I will tell you this: the guy was, if nothing else, he was a genius IT guy. I think I can just stand on that word, that he really was. He had that part of the brain that was massively powerful and understood networking and how to get data. If it's out there in ones and zeros, I can get to it.
Yeah.
And but I never really thought about it. So anyway, that happened as I'm driving north to help Fatima get out of the house and get into this new apartment in Beaverton where she said she needed to be. At this point, Megan didn't lose contact with Fatima by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, she stayed as much in contact with her as I understood it, which is pretty often. But I would also say that, and I made this as a note, that really I found that my relation with my wife and I got even closer. I mean, we were already very, very, very close, but this thing with the Krupp family really seemed to affect not just me, but it affected my wife, and it actually got us to be even closer. It's kind of an odd juxtaposition when you look back at that final year, because there's so much other information that says the opposite. But I can honestly tell you, at least my perception, as it was in front of me facially, that Megan was very, very endeared to me, even all the more. That was just a point I want to make. So at this point, Fatima now has an attorney and is working over divorce issues and I guess custody issues and whatnot. And at this point, Megan my wife starts making periodic drives to go visit her and the kids. And how often? I'd say, I don't know, maybe once every 2 weeks, something like that. Now, they're always on the phone, always in contact that way. But I'd say my wife would probably go up there about once every other week for a day trip and be with them. And in fact, I had even gone and joined her several times, I was just sort of tagging along, of course. I wasn't much in terms of the conversation between the two, but I was there. And
were these just big anti-husband conversations that were constantly going on?
No.
Or were they more
Well, I would say they're always Fatima was always, downloading the legal issues and the fight there. And by this time, of course, Jeff had hired his own attorney, and it started to become, this legal battle, custody, getting the kids. And I'm just thinking, well, how in the world? I mean, what do you mean get custody? I mean, you went into open court and said, I'm thinking of murdering them all. I was just thinking, how in the world, what remedy is there for that? It just seemed impossible. But nonetheless, he hired an attorney out of Albany. And
Was he basically trying to say he was under duress and thus giving that?
Well, I don't think he had the competence to say that, but I think he was, in one way or another, and this is interesting because you're going.
Jumping a little ahead?
No, that's okay. It's okay. I can see why you'd want to have sort of a feeling for that now. He wanted to get his wife and kids back. He had no understanding of his own condition, basically. But no doubt when he went to this attorney, and I did finally meet with this attorney, the attorney he hired, no doubt when he hired this attorney, the attorney very quickly realized he was dealing with an incompetency issue, and that the claim in court was to be considered utter nonsense, and that whatever this man was, that he was no threat whatsoever. So,
Did he really have the thoughts?
well, that's what he said.
So there's...
Well, I mean, again, you're 99% to the truth of that, and at the end, I could stop now and tell you what I think, but let me just, I'd rather get to the end, because I think you'll have so much information, then you go, yeah, of course, it would make totally, you can see how this happened, why it happened, and why he just stood there and even, yes, I stand on my claim of such and such. So anyway, this is what's going on. So this is, I don't know what time this is. This is, probably December, January time frame. I mean, they've each got their attorneys, and they're now battling it out. But this is just now a horror to see. I mean, you've got 4 children. 2 of them were in their mid to late teens, but 2 were just little kids, like 4 and 6. And it really was just a horrific tragedy to see. It just never stopped to disturb me. Never stopped disturbing me. Okay, so now I go to a remembrance I had that it was just about this time of the breakup of the Krupp family, that my mother-in-law began routinely petitioning my wife to come out to visit. Now, they live in Sarasota, Florida, 3,000 miles away. And while it wasn't like my wife didn't go visit them, I mean, she would at least visit them once a year at least. Now I've got a mother-in-law who's wanting her to come out literally every 6, maybe 8 weeks, every 6 to 8 weeks. And they were saying, hey, we'll pay for every single dime. We just want to come see, we want to see our daughter, and that's what this is about. And don't worry, everything's covered.
And they would not invite you?
I was not invited. I don't think it was ever said he's specifically uninvited.
Oh, okay.
But to be honest with you, by this point, I knew that already about the drunken tirades and the psychosis of her mother and everything there, and then the degradation of the family in general. Sure, they're wealthy degenerates is basically what they were. And to me, it was just a feeling I just didn't want to have anything to do with. It was, I didn't have ill will, they're repulsive, and it never got to the point where I had to say, you know what, wife, your family is evil and wicked, and I'm not gonna have you doing this anymore. There's something afoot here, and they're trying to destroy us. I didn't have that sense yet. For me, I just had no connection with this family whatsoever at this point, or very little. I mean, there was no animosity. I don't want to make it say that, hey, we had finally reached a point of animus. It wasn't that at all. It was more like my gut, dislike of them and who they were, and by this time I could just see who this family was, and they were very distasteful to me. So anyway, my mother-in-law is continually asking pleading for my wife to come out for these visits, and this happened throughout basically the entirety of 2006. I knew getting married and having my wife be 3,000 miles from her parents, I mean, I had a sympathy to, making sure that it wasn't just a total cutoff, that there was definitely, a connection she would always have with her parents and a periodic visitation and whatnot. So and I always made sure that took place, but I just didn't, there were no red or yellow flags going up because of this. I just thought, okay, they're getting older and they want to see more of their daughter and they haven't seen a lot of her. So, looking back at it and looking back at that time frame, it was very obvious what was going on. I mean, they were doing their part in trying to separate my wife emotionally, mentally, in every sense of the word from me. And I'm convinced.
Fought them at the same time.
Not trying, when they weren't trying to.
No, I mean.
Oh yeah, there was a double teaming.
And they were in a way probably in
It
accord
was a yes.
Yeah. That's,
You already know because I already told you about the
Yeah,
phone calls.
right.
Clearly this was a collaborative effort to destroy my relationship with my wife and the marriage, and so I just wanted to say in retrospect that was very clear. It was about the last visit before the end came was in about mid to late October. My wife had just come back from another visit with her folks, and so I just want to make a note that was the last visit they had, and that was basically only a couple weeks more before the end came, and so here it is it was on November 11th, 2006, that it was a day, I believe it was a Saturday. My next door neighbor on the north of me, a guy named Jack Shepard, he was in his mid-70s. Well, we had learned suddenly, like only a week before, that he had died. And his wife, Arlene, had invited us over for a wake and a celebration of his life. And so we went over there the Saturday morning to partake of this. And that morning, I'm going to get now into details because
Yes.
this is really where the nub of things start happening. That very morning, I can recall it all. I remember my wife getting dressed, and she put on this lovely little skirt and an outfit, sort of a French-looking outfit, and I was just telling her how beautiful she looked and lovely, and she would smile at me. She would just saying, thank you so much. And I mean, I could just see this endearing, loving smile that she was giving me. And when it came time to go over, we held hands and we walked over. It was a gray, rainy day, and so we walked over to the house, and we were at the Shepherd's house for several hours to be part of this wake, and just
the wake was at the house?
Yeah, it was at the house.
The body was at the house?
Oh, no. He was, I don't know if they'd already had the funeral yet.
Oh, I
I'm not
see.
even sure. It was just a
get-together.
It was a get-together, just friends and family. And, because, I knew him pretty well. We weren't like pals per se, but I mean, he's a very nice gentleman, and I always talked with him, and every time we would be near the fences. And
So he was your direct neighbor?
Yeah, he'd been my direct neighbor on the north of my property.
And him dying has no sinister things?
No. He was in his mid-70s. I heard he died of pancreatic cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I didn't know it until after the fact, but so that's what happened. So anyway, so this is how this day starts, and my wife and I were just very, very close. I mean, we sat together the whole time, holding hands the whole time. My wife had a somber sense about her because of the loss of Arlene losing her husband, but nothing untoward whatsoever. In fact, I would say for the occasion, it was as normal as you could say normal could be in a circumstance like that. Eventually, it came time to say goodbye and give our respects and condolences, and we walked back to the house. And And again, I just want to say that the time we were at the wake, my wife seemed to be content and peaceful the whole time, that there was nothing whatsoever on her mind. She was not reflecting anything like, hey, there's something that's percolating there whatsoever. So here's where it gets to the nitty-gritty of the worst, basically the worst day of my life. My wife and I went back to the house. We had a nice, beautiful wood-burning stove, and I kicked a fire, got a fire going before we went over to the wake, and so we're walking to the house, and my wife walks in front of me, and she goes over to the wood-burning stove, which we did all the time. We loved that part of the room. It was a delightful place to be in, especially when it was cold and wet outside. And she sits down in front of the stove, and I sat down in front of the little wicker sofa chair that we had that was just opposite. And as soon as she sits down, I just see her, and it almost instantly. I mean, she goes from this angelic wife that I've known and loved all of our marriage, and she just kind of tilts her head forward, and I mean, a look of darkness just consumes her. And I see this instantly, and I said, honey, I said, what's wrong? I mean, I'm telling you, I'm looking at something that's way wrong here. I mean, in fact, I would even say I had never even seen the countenance on her before like this. I'd never seen this. So it was kind of shocking me and unnerving me what I was seeing. So I asked her, I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, I'm not happy in this marriage. And at this point, I mean, my whole life is flashing before me. I don't have any, at this moment, if we stop the clock, I don't know what's happening. It's a shock, I can't even articulate the shock that it was to my soul, but I know that something has gotten a hold of her. I'm not saying I knew it was demonic, I'm just saying something horrific has gotten a hold of her, and it was just steamrolling me. There's no way to say I was on top of the situation. It just felt like a tractor was rolling over me, back and forth at this point. And so I get up and I said, I don't know what you're saying here, and I don't know why you're saying this, and I don't know where this is coming from. And I got up and I walked into the other living room, because I was just thinking, get up and just kind of trying to clear my head and trying to figure out what am I dealing with here, what am I dealing with? And she comes running up behind me. I can hear her running, and she grabs my arm, and I turn around and go, what are you doing? And she's just staring at me, and I mean, the only way I can put it, she's now her face has got like a maniacal look to it. And
now, is the voice the same, as always?
Oh, no.
Has the voice changed?
The voice has changed. The voice is darker.
Is it that of a man, or is it?
Not of a man, but darker. That's all I can say. It's darker.
Yeah.
And I said, what? What is it? And she's holding on to me. I go, what is it? What do you want? And she says, I want a divorce. And she just lays it out like that. And at that point, I'm beside myself. I can't even tell you, when something like that happens, or a horror like that happens, you basically lose your ability to think. You're under such an emotional and mental assault. It's nothing you're not even thinking at that point. The only thing I did is I said, I need to go for a drive. And I went into the garage, got in my truck, and went for a drive. And no sooner am I driving around thinking, why am I doing this? This is stupid. You need to go back to the house, and you need to find out what's going on here. You need to do something here, but driving around is not what you need to do. So I did. I was maybe gone maybe an hour. And by this time, it's fairly dark, late in the afternoon. And when I come back to the house, all of the lights on the house are on. Our house had, the contractor had put lights all over the front of the house, not floodlights, but decorative lighting, so that you could from the inside of the house you could basically light up the whole front yard. And it was something that I would always do for my wife. Whenever she was gone, I knew she was coming back any minute. It was sort of like a, hey, I love you. This is how I express it to you. Just one of the ways. And when I came back, the lights were on, and I'm thinking, okay, she knows what that means. And so I'm thinking, okay, I don't know. All right, well, better that they're on than off. So I get into the garage, pull into the garage, and the first thing I hear is our dog Rio is absolutely out of control, ballistic. He's just basically barking uncontrollably. We had this dog for 10 years, and he was very, very docile. There was nothing, he'd never done anything like this before, but he literally was barking maniacally, almost as if like something was tormenting him. And indeed, I believe something was tormenting him. So I come back into the house, and she does not meet me. She's sitting in front of that fireplace again. And I walk in, and she's just staring at me. I mean, just with like a shark's stare. And I sit down on the wicker chair again, and I said, what's the meaning of this? Why did you say that? Why are you doing this? And then she just starts basically chanting, a low-level chant. You've abused me. You've abused me. You've abused me. You've abused me. At this point, I just break down. I'm crying. At this point, I can see that she's completely insane at minimum. And that's all I knew at minimum, that she'd completely lost her mind. As to why, I did not have that cognition at that time, but I knew that much. And I finally just firmed myself up, and I stood up, and I said, I know what the word abuse means. I have never abused you. I have loved you with all my heart from day one. And all I could think of is I was really just going to start breaking down. And so I turned and went into back into that front living room. And I just thought to myself, get into the garage, you're going to break down uncontrollably, just get in there and weep. And as I'm opening the garage door, the door into the garage, and I'm just walking into it, I hear my wife running up behind me, and I mean like charging. And before I'm even turning around, she basically like jumps on me and starts pounding me and beating on me as hard as she could, like with as much violence as her body could muster, to pound on me. I just collapsed, not from anything she was doing, from the horror, as this thing is this is a horror that is just not finding an end. It's just getting worse and worse, and now I'm just bawling uncontrollably. And as soon as I collapse and start just bawling uncontrollably, she's now, as I recall, she puts like one arm around me, and I well, wait a minute, maybe that's ahead of myself. She's still beating on me. And then once she sees that I'm just completely crying, she brings her head right next to my ear, and she's screaming as loud as she can, stop it, stop it, stop it. And I mean, I don't even know how many times, but it was just like an endless, barrage of stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. And I, for whatever reason, had the wherewithal to ask, why are you beating me? And the moment I ask that question, she stops, and then she flings her arms around me and is holding me as tightly as she can and cradling my head against hers. In one of the most, loving, if that's all you saw, were just that little miniature picture. So it was one of the most loving embraces, I'd ever felt from her. And I'm still weeping, but eventually she stops screaming, and I get up, and we walked back into the house. Now, I'm just going to say at this point, this is a several hours, evening, obviously. I mean, I would say this
And this is
is
something that's never happened to you before in your life.
never.
Wow.
Oh, no, I mean, there's no history. There's no history in my life. There's no history of anybody I know. There's no history of anything in our relationship whatsoever that would have hinted, like, this is a troubled marriage and it just keeps ratcheting downward. No, there was nothing. And so I just wanted to say at this point that I don't have minute by minute, narration here.
No.
So much of my mind went blank on so
Right.
much of this, but I do remember certain things, like the garage scene. I remember that well. So my next bullet point on this is that we walked back into the house. We both sat down on the wicker couch, and she's not saying anything. She's just mute. And I'm finally drying up. I'm finally getting some composure. And I finally turned to her and I asked her point blank. I said, how do you justify what you're doing before the Lord Jesus Christ? Now, she wasn't looking at my answer. She was looking straight forward. And then she just turns at me like this and says, I don't like that. At some other point, I don't recall how the conversation, how it got to this next point, but at some point, I guess I said, where are you going? What are you doing? What is it you're designed to do here? I said, is your design, you just want the house? Do you want to just take the house? I mean, what is it you want? Well, as soon as I asked that question about the house, she started to almost tremble and she said, no. I mean, it was like, now I could see that there was like an internal battle going on. And she's sort of like speaking, not really so much to me, but to some other entity. And she's saying, no, I won't take the house. It's his. He bought this house. No, it's all his. It's his house. No, I won't take it. It's his. This belongs to him. He's worked all his life for this. It's his. It's his. And so that's one thing I remember distinctly. At some point after that, I don't know how soon after that, it's literally time to go to bed. It's time to sleep. It's late. And I'm trying to figure out, well, what do we do here? What's the next thing? And she comes to me and she says, I want you to sleep with me tonight. And no, it did not mean for, sexual relations. It just meant I want you in my bed tonight. And I remember looking at her, and I don't remember when she'd asked me. I think she asked me that when she went to bed first. So she went into our bedroom and got herself in bed. And she called me, and I went into the bedroom, and I said, yeah, what is it? She said, well, I want you to sleep with me tonight. And I'm right next to her, and I'm saying, you've just declared to me you want a divorce for no reason? And you want me to sleep with you? And I mean, this was really what I asked. I mean, I was dumbfounded by the utter insanity of it. And as I asked her this, she's under the covers looking up at me. I walked up to the bed, she's looking at me. And as I asked her this, she starts shaking violently. I mean, she is thrashing on the bed. And she's not even looking at me. She's just like looking up at the ceiling. And she is just thrashing about. Again, I'm not knowing what I'm seeing. I know now. At that time, I did not. I just know this is a horror that just gets worse and worse and worse. And I said, I think the best thing for me to do is to just sleep on the couch tonight. And we can talk more about this at some other time. Again, I don't even know at this point what right and wrong is in terms of what the right thing to do. This is just what I decided, and this is what it seemed right, especially when I see the insanity of her behaviors. And she said, well, then, and then she finally calms down and says, well, then I'll come out in a little bit, and we can talk more. And I went, okay. And so I went out to the couch and just laid there. I was unable to sleep at all, and waited and waited and waited, and she never came out. And several times I got up from the couch to look like, well, what is she doing? I look up. The whole night she left the light on in the bedroom. Obviously something we never ever did. We never sleep with the lights on. And for some reason, she slept with the light on the whole night, and she never did come out. So the next morning, she comes out. It's, I don't know, 7 a.m., maybe 8. I hear her slowly walking down the hallway toward me. And I don't even think I slept 5 minutes that night. It was utterly impossible. But I hear her coming, and she walks out. She's walking toward me slowly, and she had a very sort of gingerly, like almost a fearful look on her face, or apprehensive, maybe I should say. And she sits down there. We had a little ottoman right in front of this little couch, with this wicker couch we had. And she sits down in front of it, and she sits down right next to me. And so I sit up, and I remember grabbing a hold of her hand and just caressing her hand. And I said, I have to ask you, why are you betraying us? Why are you betraying us? And at this point, she breaks down in a tear, a weeping, the likes of which I had never seen in a human being. It's almost impossible to describe. I mean, it was almost like violently crying. And as she breaks down, she's sitting on the ottoman, and she starts rocking back and forth. She's not looking at me. She's got a 1,000-yard stare out the window. And she just says, I am evil. I am evil. I am evil. I am evil. And she did that for I don't even know how long, until I finally said, stop it, stop it. I mean, it was beyond disturbing to me. I didn't know what this meant. I said, stop it, and she does, and she just stops, and she just keeps this stare out the window. And then I just remember her turning to me and saying, I mean, with this cold, stone cold face and that darker voice, I need you to go take the dog out for his walk. This is something she did. This was her routine every morning, to take our dog Rio out for his morning walk. And that walk entailed, we would walk down our little Bramblewood Road and up Palestine, which was just a rural country road, and maybe go a quarter of a mile. So the whole walk took maybe, 20 minutes, half hour at most. And she's saying, I need you to do it. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know why, but at this point, I know she's so completely insane that taking the dog for a walk was not a problem. I'll take the dog for a walk, and just at least don't agitate things. And so I get the dog on the leash, and we start walking the typical route we would walk. And I don't get even a third of the way into this before clearly God spoke to me and said, you need to get back to the house right now. And I did. I U-turned it on the spot, got right back, and as soon as I'm walking up the Bramblewood and approaching our driveway, I see the garage door opening up, and my wife frantically lugging a suitcase and throwing it into her car, her new Beetle. And she does not see me. And I said, what are you doing? And she looks, and she says, I need to get to Fatima. I need to get to Fatima. Fatima can help me. She's the one who can help me. She's the one who can help me. I need to get to Fatima. And I said, what are you talking about? What do you mean Fatima? What has she got to do with this? Why do you need her? She can help me. She knows that I've got problems. She can help me. She can help me. She can help keep this marriage together. And again, I mean, all I can think of is I've got an insane wife. She's completely, utterly insane. And I either let her go, or I simply tie her to a tree like an animal and say, well, I'm just going to take physical dominion over you, as if that would solve anything. So with that, I said, okay. I said, well, how long are you going to be gone? She goes, I just need a couple of days to talk this out with Fatima, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about it. I'll even call you Wednesday morning. You know, this is like a couple of days later, and she said, I'll call you Wednesday morning, and we'll make this all happen. I said, this is what you want to do? This is what you think is necessary? She goes, yes, I need to get to Fatima. Fatima knows what to do. Fatima knows what I need to do. And so with that, my wife gets in her Beetle and drove off. Strangely, the routine that we would do whenever I would often see her, you know, off, if she had to go someplace, I would just go and walk out with her, get her in her car, and let, you know, wave her goodbye as she would drive away. So Bramblewood Lane was only like a couple hundred yards till you hit the teat into Palestine, and when she would ever turn, she would always wave. This was a routine. And as she drove, she turned and actually came to a stop and waved to me, and blew me, I think she even blew me a kiss, and then disappeared out of sight. So that was the last time I ever saw my wife. That was the
You
end.
never saw her after that?
I never saw her.
She was never at the court hearings either?
Oh no. There was no. She's gone. She's gone. She had hired the most wicked attorney in Corvallis, and I did even hear that this guy named Larry Stuber. Someone said, you know,
He's a Jew.
He's a what?
He was a Jew.
A Jew?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. Is Stuber a Jewish name?
Sounds like it.
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea. But I did hear that they said this is the most ruthless, despicable lawyer in Corvallis. Somebody knew that. I think it was somebody at the church said, "Oh yeah, this guy is notoriously evil," and which is saying a lot because lawyerdom is, by definition, in my opinion, notoriously evil. Now, of course, we have exceptions, and we have a beloved brother who is a wonderful, wonderful exception to that. But lawyerdom in general, I stand on that. So anyway, why did I go to this?
Because you said you never saw her again.
Yeah, no, I never.
And she did not call you on Wednesday?
No, thank
But
you.
you talked to her?
Thank you for saying this. Yeah, that's actually what happened. I expected her to call because I think she said she was going to call me. Well, I mean, you know, turned to mid-morning and I hadn't heard anything. And believe me, I'm on pins and needles. I'm just, you know, the 2-day period was just utter horror.
What did you do during this period? Did you,
Prayed nonstop.
you didn't tell your mother about it? or anybody?
No. I was just in a panic. I was in a panic. I prayed nonstop, and I said, Lord God, if I've ever needed you, I've needed you more now than I've ever needed you. And I just prayed and prayed and prayed. And so she did not call, and I called her. And when she answered the phone, I could almost not tell it was her voice. It was so dark. It was so almost a male voice. Not quite. I could still tell it was her. And it was as dark a conversation as anything I'd ever heard. Again, I didn't know what was happening to me then. I did not know what I was dealing with. I do now. But this thing was kingdom of hell dark. And she just said, don't talk, or it said, don't talk. This is what's going to happen. I'm not coming back. I've made my final decision. And she even said, now I'm coming back tonight because I need to get my computer. I need to be able to have computer contact with my mother. And she said, I need to get a couple other things. And, of course I'm thinking, well, do I just say over my dead body, or do I say, no, that's not going to happen, or I made the decision I made based on the fact that all I could think of at this point was, don't do anything to make it worse. That was my rationale. If I was wrong, I was wrong. But that was my rationale. And I said, okay, so you need to come back to get the computer, is that what you're telling me? And she or it said yes, and you'd better not be there. And I mean, I'm hearing language from her/it, the likes of which I've never heard. And by that I mean hateful language. I mean it's like, I want you dead. That's basically how the sense I'm getting from her/it. And so I did. I honored that request and was gone for the 3 hours she requested. When I came back, indeed, she had been there. The computer was gone. She took our dog. That was very disturbing. If I had known that, I would never have let that happen. She, as it turned out, I know what she said. She said, I want the title to my car. I think that's what she said. She wanted the title from my car. And so I had the title to her new Beetle out, and in a decision I made that I have to assume was God's